Microsoft certainly knows that systems are spread out all over the place these days and that systems are typically connected to some type of network. As a result, they give us lots of great remote management capabilities so we can assist our users without visiting their location. Now, keep in mind, there are tools that were really designed for remote work, like remote assistance and remote desktop. And we're going to spend the majority of our time discussing these in this nugget. But don't forget the tools that also can be beneficial for remotely managing something. For instance, when we use PowerShell to manage a remote system, this is called PowerShell remoting. When we use the Microsoft Management Console, as you've seen in our MMC nugget, we don't have to be working on the local computer. We can be managing a remote system inside of the MMC. But let's, as I said, focus on remote assistance and remote desktop, two tools that we really haven't covered in this course in any way, shape, or form. Now, definitely something to think about here is firewall settings, because after all, when we're talking remote management, we're talking about someone coming into our machine and manipulating it. So certainly there's security concerns here. I'm on a remote system right now, so we are actually using a remote tool called TeamViewer in order to access this remote device. I bring this up because remember, there are third-party tools that are going to allow us to remotely manage systems as well. But anyways, we're into this remote device using TeamViewer so I can show you the firewall settings on this remote device. Look at this. If we allow an app or feature through this Windows firewall, if you scroll down, notice what's on by default for private networks. There's the ability to do remote assistance on the private network. Notice remote desktop is something that is disabled by default. So we might have to allow something like remote desktop capabilities through the firewall settings in order to meet success with it. So that was pretty interesting, wasn't it, that remote assistance was set up? Let's investigate this a little more closely. If we go into the system applet of Control Panel and you go to remote settings, notice we're in the system properties on the remote tab and something called remote assistance is enabled. Allow remote assistance connections to this computer. If you go under advanced, it says, all right, allow this computer to be controlled remotely. It's a maximum of 6 hours for invitations that you send out to remain active. And notice we can lock it down so that invitations can only be used from computers running Windows Vista or later. This is to enhance the security of this feature, not allowing like older systems that might be easily compromised to come in and provide this remote assistance. So this is something that's set up pretty much by default for us in Windows 10. So now what you would educate your user to do is go down to Cortana and type in remote assistance, and the best match is going to be to invite someone to connect to their PC. So they can come in here and say, all right, I need someone that I trust to help me, and they can send an invitation. They can save the invitation as a file. They could use email to send the invitation, or they could use Easy Connect. There are some hoops you need to jump through to use Easy Connect. It's the peer name resolution protocol specifically that we got to get working. I think what most people would do, of course, is send an email as an invitation. What we'll do is just walk through the saving as a file. So notice we have this RA invitation file format that we can utilize. I'll go ahead and dump this into a quick shared location like my Dropbox folder. So we'll go into Documents, Temp, and I'll save this invitation so that I can access it. Notice, give your helper the invitation file and password. So here is a password that we're going to need as well. Notice also in this dialog that Windows Remote Assistance is waiting for that incoming connection. So let me head to my local machine. Let me grab that invitation file and this password, and let's see if we can come in here and give this poor user the remote assistance they're looking for. So here we are on my local machine, and I have double-clicked that file that they sent us, and this is the remote assistance window, and it's waiting for that password. So let me put that in. It was GKPTRWLC79Q7. We're going to input that, say OK, And look at this, waiting for acceptance. You can't see that, but it's in the lower left corner of this dialog. So if we head back over to the remote machine, we see, look at this. Would you like to allow Anthony Sequeira to connect to your computer? They say yes, and the connection to this system is made. Notice one of the cool things is we can start a chat dialogue with the person that's helping us remotely. And of course, another nice feature is the ability to request control of their desktop. So you can see here, Anthony Sequeira's requested control of the remote desktop, so we can literally drive the mouse for them and assist them with their machine. So the remote assistance feature, as you can see, is clearly geared to the end user that's going to panic and need some help with their system. What's geared more for us is remote desktop. We would go in and we would configure remote desktop so that we as network administrators can proactively go in, connect to a remote system, and manage it. This would be done, of course, through that system functionality inside of Control Panel. So if we go into Advanced System Settings, we're going to go over to the remote area and we're going to allow remote connections to this computer, for example, and then we can go in and we can select the users that are going to be able to come in and manage this system. One of the ones that you saw that's already enabled is my Anthony Sequeira account on this network, for instance. So we could go in and we could make sure that it is that account that's going to be permitted remote access through. By the way, remember the Windows firewall. When we allow this remote access through utilizing remote desktop, we need to make sure that the Windows firewall has been updated appropriately. Once you've ensured remote desktop is set up on that remote client, connecting is simple. I just went down to Cortana and said remote desktop, and it brought up the remote desktop connection option. And I'm going to input that remote computer name in here. Under options, by the way, I could provide alternative credentials, but my username is pre-filled out and that's perfect. I will choose connect. By the way, notice there's options for display settings and things of that nature. In fact, I'll back this off so we can see it at the 1024 by 768. At least that'll be pretty close. Here's 1280 by 720. That should be perfect. So we can set the display options, for instance, and then we can use the connect button. Notice what's going to happen. I will be prompted for my password, thank goodness. And then I'll say, okay. It will say, look, we can't verify through a valid certificate that the machine you're connecting to is the machine you're connecting to. So we could always enhance the security here by using certificates. I'll say, yeah, that's okay. We know it is who we think it is. And now look at this. We are connected through a remote desktop connection to that machine. So now setting up remote desktop, I really don't have to utilize some third-party tool like TeamViewer. And that was so funny. We just had a chat from one of my colleagues, Garth Schulte, here at CBT Nuggets. Leaving the remote desktop session is very simple. Just closing the window will terminate the remote session. So in this nugget, we examined really two main tools for remotely managing systems. There's the remote assistance tool designed for the end user to ask for help and then get help from maybe a peer or a network administrator. And then there is the remote desktop tool. The remote desktop feature would be a replacement for some third-party tool like LogMeIn or TeamViewer. I hope you found this nugget informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.